Nevada County Arts Council has been made an administering organization for the state of California. The state of California has been awarded $60 million to re-grant to artists who will create awareness around issues that are critical to society. And today we'll be looking at some of those issues, some as they relate to the program goals. And we're going to relate them back to a really important federal program under President Roosevelt that launched on the heels of the Great Depression that so inspired the inception of the California Creative Corps. And then we're going to be bringing that knowledge and the best practice, if you like, and some of those gold standard programs that came out of that program into the present moment. And we're going to be kind of challenging each other to think up, ideas for funding for the Creative Corps. Before I introduce David, just to say, we're a tiny agency within the Upstate region. We're one of 58 county arts councils called state local partners.
Well, that was just, I was just putting some background music on the computer.
What I might do is
to mute everybody, laptop speakers
and myself, and that would be sweet.
Loud enough.
Thanks so much. Brilliant.
We'll have to do about it.
How's that going? I think we can mute all at once. So here are the 4 program goals of the California Creative Corps. You as artists, or you as agencies hoping to employ artists, will be wanting to create public awareness around environmental justice issues, whether they relate to water, energy conservation, climate mitigation, emergency preparedness, relief and recovery, civic engagement, including election participation, social justice and community engagement, and public health awareness. And Gianna, my colleague, is going to, some of these things often, some of the most simple things often need clarification, especially since they often interact with one another in life. So Gianna is going to post some definitions of, for example, the difference between civic engagement and social justice, et cetera, just to make it clear, because a little later on, in a few minutes, in fact, we're going to create gathering spaces for you to self-select, and you're going to choose which of these areas that you want to brainstorm over. More about that in a moment. So this is what California looks like from the perspective of California Arts Council and how it's divided up the state. So each of these color-coded areas within the state has been given 1 or 2 administering organizations for the California Creative Corps. That means that anywhere and any artist anywhere in California can apply within their own region to their administering organization for funds that will pay them to create awareness around issues that are critical to society. And you can see that the yellow bit of the state up the far north is where we are. It's called the Upstate region. We've created a website, upstatecreativecorps.org, corps with an S on the end, like army of artists. And Gianna's going to put that link into the chat for you. It's a beta site. It'll go live at the beginning. It'll be sort of properly populated at the beginning of February, when our grant application opens and when we issue and make public our guidelines. So we're right before that time. We're 2 or 3 weeks out from that launch. And we want you to meet with David today and discuss your projects and brainstorm ideas to give you a bit of a head start. The way we're going to keep our populations, our diverse populations across these 19 counties informed is through our network of county arts agencies. So today, maybe you can just put your hands up, those of you who represent county arts councils or arts commissions within the upstate region. We have quite a few with us today, and you'll be seeing them in the breakout room. And each of our state local partners or county arts agencies will be your local contact for the Creative Corps. how on earth could we possibly cover and serve all of you across this 19-county state unless we were to work with such a brilliant network? So these slides were just drawn from a listening session that we held in Plumas County last night, in fact, on Martin Luther King Day. So that's why you see Plumas Arts, but yes, again, this is just to show the incredible reach of Nevada County Arts Council as an administering organization through this amazing network. So I will mention one element that we're probably not going to.
We need to be out the door at 6.
So we're probably not going to be talking significantly about the California Healthy Places Index today, because we're talking about the WPA in relation to the California Creative Corps, but it may come up. So I'm going to ask Gianna to put a link to the Healthy Places Index. I will also just draw attention to one of the things we draw attention to when we go into any community. And right now we've held listening sessions in 18 of the 19 counties in upstate California. And we like to draw attention to the specific demographics within your own communities, so that when you're creating applications for the Creative Corps, you too can reference and you can let us know that you're aware of who is in your communities, who needs to be at the table, who needs a voice. So I'm going to stop sharing there. And I'm coming back, and I'd like to introduce you to David. David, welcome. You are former National Endowment for the Arts Director of Literature and book critic of the San Francisco Chronicle. You now teach at UCLA, contributing as critic at large for the LA Times, and you're founder of the 12-year-old Libros Schmibros Lending Library in Boyle Heights. Honestly, the list goes on. Gianna, I wonder if you'd copy that biography one more time so that those who've just entered can have benefit of that. David, you were just about to say something.
Oh, just that if I had known that the bio I sent you was going to wind up in a little chat balloon, I promise I would have slenderized it a bit. But yeah.
I intentionally didn't tell you because I didn't want you to get away with that. We want everyone to know how great you are. It seriously is amazing. I'm holding up a book here. I'm holding up a book here called California in the 1930s, The WPA Guide to the Golden State, Introduction by David Kipen. This is why we're here with David. We know that the California Creative Corps was inspired by the federal art projects that came out of the WPA. So let's talk about it, David. Welcome.
Thank you very much. And thank you all for showing up. I wish I could be there. I might just hold up this, which is the original of the Federal Writers Project to California from 1940. It's quite a beaut. And it's basically why I suspect Eliza was good enough to invite me to talk to you. And I apologize in advance if some of my experience and, for lack of a better word, expertise, and unfortunately my obsession is the Writers Project of the Federal Arts Projects. But there were, in fact, 4, which are all dear to me. In addition to the Writers Project, there was a visual arts project, there was a music project, there was a theater project. And together, yes, they put tens of thousands of Americans back to work in the 1930s, practicing their craft. As I said, the Writers Project is the one dear to me. And in fact, I've been working on it for the last 2.5 years because as a result of the pandemic, I decided that there ought to be a new one, and started jumping up and down about it and editorializing about it in the LA Times. And before I knew it, Congressman Ted Lieu had invited his staff and me to turn it into a bill, which is still alive And in fact, we hope and suspect on the brink, not of passage, because that's a little complicated in Congress nowadays, but the brink of enactment as part of a federal agency that I shouldn't mention. So root us on. And also approach what it is I hope you'll do in the course of applying for this as if it too could be a model for a national program, because I suspect, well, it wouldn't be the first idea in California, the Creative Corps, that was taken up by the rest of the country. So I'm thrilled that you're all here, and I encourage you to, I don't know, write hard. You may be making 50 copies. Anyway, write hard, act hard, play hard, and paint hard. Anyway, I should say that the federal arts projects were totally unprecedented. Nobody had tried this before. Federal arts funding, as we think of it today, the NEA didn't come into being until the Johnson administration in the 1960s. Traditionally, other countries have been better than this, much better at this than we have. But the projects of the 1930s were different. Certainly, there had never been a writer's project like that before anywhere else in the world, and there hasn't been since. And one of the things I think that helped it work, and one of the things that I think could really help what each of you is doing work, is that these projects were almost completely created by Americans' own neighbors. Thinking of the example of the Writers Project, if a bunch of writers from New York and maybe California had sort of parachuted into the middle of the country with pencils and pith helmets and started trying to tell America's story, the project would have been resented and it would have died within the first 6 months. What made it work as much as anything is that the writers themselves were from each of these communities. No one can tell the story of Upstate California as well as you can, whatever your medium. And I trust you guys will be welcomed if you approach your fellow Upstaters in a spirit of curiosity. So let me just mention a few examples of how the original arts projects worked with respect to your individual disciplines, and maybe start this conversation about how you guys might take up that same challenge. Nobody had any great hope for the writer's guides. The idea was just to, maybe give jobs to a few thousand writers and editors and photographers, just because maybe they'd have a little more dignity than if you were just writing them checks to sit at home. What they didn't expect was that they accidentally hired a bunch of geniuses. So before they knew it, they had John Cheever and Saul Bellow and Ralph Ellison and Richard Wright and a lot of other writers who are very dear to me working for them. Zora Neale Hurston also worked with great dignity and excellence for the project. Let's see. With respect to the visual arts, probably a lot of you know that the WPA is identified, maybe disproportionately identified, with a lot of poster work. Just to see if I can do it, I might share a screen and show off just an example of it to you. Can you see that? The Be Kind to Books Club?
Yep.
Ah, good. And thank you for shouting out. This is meant to be a conversation, not a lecture. I do altogether too much lecturing at UCLA during the week. This is actually a poster that I've had on the wall at Libros Schmibros, my nonprofit storefront bilingual lending library in the eastern Los Angeles. And it was commissioned by, I don't know which local project, to stimulate interest in reading and books. We got another one here. Good grades and good health go together, which may help get at some of what you guys, I gather, are called upon to demonstrate. You're not just creating wonderful works of art in whatever medium for the benefit of your neighbors. You're also, I gather, tasked with doing it in the service of public health, however broadly defined. And broadly defined may be the key word there. There is a stigma surrounding, what should we say, socially beneficial art. It can be, identified with, Russian social realism and all kinds of art that's good for you, as opposed to the kind of thing that you as artists might be doing if the government weren't paying you to do it. Certainly that was true of the Writers Project. The writers I just mentioned, these great writers, they were willing to cash the check, but they did not really want to be writing guides to all 48 then states. They would much rather have been off writing, poetry, novels, whatever the case may be, or even good journalism. I'm kind of a broken record on the subject, and Eliza can attest to that. I think journalism is every bit as much an art as any other form of writing, or of the arts for that matter, and at least when practiced at the highest level. And I hope some journalists out there will be participants in this. And those of you who aren't, I hope you'll encourage the journalists in your necks of the woods to participate in this for a mercenary reason, which is if they're participating, they might be likelier to cover what you're doing. And also for the best of reasons, which is I think they have a lot to contribute. So yeah, there are these posters that the visual arts subdivision of the WPA created. The music project did some remarkable things. I can put in the chat room a link to a documentary that I made for public television earlier, well, I guess late last year, that was about the WPA in Los Angeles, and specifically the arts projects, and what form a new federal arts project might take here in Los Angeles. So I apologize for the LA bias, but if it will maybe stimulate your curiosity about and get the ideas flowing about what form some of these projects might take, by all means, help yourself to it. Skim over the me part if you want. The concerts that the music division created were quite remarkable. They did concerts, at least at the Hollywood Bowl, celebrating new citizens. You'd have a Hollywood Bowl full of 10,000 people who had just become naturalized American citizens, and you had orchestra concerts and choirs serenading them. A lot of the music funding went into bands, into choirs, and I don't think it's a stretch for any of these arts to say that the arts, promote public health, whether they're talking about getting vaccinated or not. If any of you feel the need in your applications, I suspect. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm so sorry. I'm so rude. Why don't we stop sharing your screen now? If you're talking about music,
yes, of course.
then, yeah, that would be great. Brilliant. And you can reshare if you want to share something.
Oh, all right, you got it.
Excellent. Thanks. Now we can all see you and each other.
Okay, much a vast improvement, at least except for me. I would say, yes, there is such a thing as the, I believe the NEA produces every 10 years a survey of public participation in the arts. And if some of you are looking to make the case, make even a tenuous case for the value of what you're doing in the name of public health, the correlation is a strong and proven one, that people who participate in the arts, vote more and volunteer more in their communities, and do all kinds of socially beneficial things. So I'm not saying go off and write a novel and then, in the name of art, claim that it's going to, I don't know, make your readers healthier. I'm just saying that it is a flexible criterion, and I believe arts practiced at the highest levels are inevitably beneficial to society. And then finally, theater. The Federal Theater Project is as famous as any of them. It gave Orson Welles one of his first great stages. There's a movie about it called Cradle Will Rock that Tim Robbins made that's quite invigorating. Not a masterpiece, but sort of gives you the spirit of the thing. It Can't Happen Here, the great anti-fascist Sinclair Lewis novel, was adapted for the stage and played all over the country, if you can imagine this. Coast to coast, there were dozens of theater companies simultaneously on the same evening producing the same play. as part of the Federal Arts Project. It's a wonderful story. There's a book about the theater project called Furious Improvisations. There is, rather miraculously, a book that just came out last year, arguably the best book ever written about the Federal Writers Project. It's called, I don't have my copy behind me, any of my several copies, but it's called Republic of Detours: How the New Deal Hired Broke Writers to Rediscover America. It's a delightful read. I encourage you to patronize your local bookstores and libraries, who are all, I'm sure, likely partners for whatever you're going to undertake. It's inspiring. Rather than try and inspire you myself, I'll point you in that direction. And then, obviously the writers, the Federal Arts Projects are not a museum piece. The 1930s are not the 2020s. And to recreate the project in its original contours would be impossible, and I think misguided. And if only to prove it, while I do encourage you to pick up a copy of the WPA Guide to California, and when I say that, I don't make a nickel off it. UC Press does. But I just wrote the introduction. It was a fee for hire. I'm just very proud of it and proud of what the country did 85 years ago. But if you look at their attention to upstate, I think you will find that it's been unjustly de-emphasized. And maybe that's to be expected. The Federal Writers Project had offices in the Bay Area, a much smaller one in Los Angeles, and it had outposts around the state. But I really don't think they did you guys justice. And so those of you who are literary artists, I think maybe there might be opportunities for you to belatedly redress some of those oversights. I hope you'll work on projects that are, enjoyable, not just for your neighbors, but to each other in different counties and maybe even statewide. I think one of the most beautiful things that the arts projects did was explain Americans' lives and places, not just to themselves, but to each other. Nothing would make me happier than for example, you guys, for naive Southern Californians like me and Central Californians to understand upstate better than we do, which is barely at all. But of course, the fundamental mission is for you guys to help your neighbors, and in the process, help yourselves. I probably shouldn't go on a whole lot longer. Since to some degree we're talking environmentally, there's a wonderful documentary the WPA made called "The Plow That Broke the Plains" that did a lot to explain the Dust Bowl to Americans. A lot of what you're doing, I think, it will be helpful even from just an explanatory point of view, rather than merely, rather than some sort of prescriptive point of view. We need to understand the problems better before we can address them. So I'm gonna, I don't know, Eliza, if I should say more or should have said less, discreetly, don't come right out and say that. But by all means, let's open it up to everybody so you guys can brainstorm some more.
What I would like to thank you so much, and I've just put a link to the plow that broke the plains, just a Wikipedia link. And keep your chats open, everyone, because there's a ton of information going into it. And we'll be sharing this recording with you later. It'll be on our website. We'll put it on Facebook, so you'll have access to it and you can share it. I love what you said, David, about redressing the lack of attention that upstate California might have received during, the WPA federal art projects, because that's exactly what all of us on this Zoom today are very used to doing, redressing these, the lack of geographic equity, if you like, in relation to the resources that we have for artists in upstate California. So it's great. And I know California Arts Council, who are the overarching administrators of this project, are very keen to redress that geographic inequity as well. We want every county to be the recipient of at least one amazing project. So when you're thinking about projects, and we're just about to give you an opportunity to choose which breakout rooms you gather in, and you can switch between the two. And Gianna, if you could put the instructions now for the breakout rooms in the chat, so that everyone can refer to them. And then we'll start those. You can switch between breakout rooms. So each breakout room will connect with one or other of the issues that we're grappling with, whether it's environmental issues, public health issues, and behavioral health and human service related issues, social justice issues, or civic engagement. You can choose the room and you can switch between them. So let's start learning from one another and having fun. Has everyone seen the instructions there? Brilliant. And then what I'd like to encourage is for those county arts agencies, executive directors among us, when you have chosen the room that you're going to be in, perhaps help facilitate the conversation. We'll be bringing you back in about 20 minutes, and we'll be asking those county arts agents, facilitators within your room, to kind of feed back some of the amazing conversations, some aha moments, some brilliant ideas, because we want to make sure we capture them. Everyone ready? Well, we still have people coming back in. I'm going to encourage folks to join, as disapproving as we may collectively be for Meta and Facebook. We've literally just created a Facebook group so that you can all join that and start having conversations and debates and dreaming up projects together. Gianna, would you put the Conversation Cafe link into the chat for everybody? And we may need to do it at the very end as well, because people, I think, we still got people coming in.
Yeah, and Eliza, I was just going to say, at the discussion we were having over in the environmental group there were so many amazing ideas, and people tried to get them in the chats, but it's like, I really want to emphasize, and somehow I just got removed. I felt like I was a whitewater rapid swept away out of there without hitting a button. So I didn't get to say bye to the group, but I wanted to say that this Conversation Cafe spot there's so many ideas and opportunities for collaboration, and it just got started there, and that was a really great discussion. So do keep it going, because that was really great.
Thanks, Katrina. And of course, this is one of several key events where they really are conversation starters. And then what we want to do is to provide you with opportunities to continue that conversation. And if you didn't grab someone else's email address or their idea or whatever from the chat, we have recorded this session. You will have access to it. Although we weren't recording, I don't think it was possible for us to record the breakout rooms, but we will be scooping up everything we found in the recorded chat. But repeat yourself, go to this Creative Corps Conversation Cafe. I'm just going to literally share my screen now so that you can see what it looks like. And you can join it. Here we go. So I know we all kind of disapprove of Facebook, etc., but it seems to be like a great place to just share ideas, like get going, get engaged. And then, of course, we have our Facebook page for the Creative Corps, but this is a specific place where that you have access to, that you can talk. Brilliant. So do we have everyone back in the room, Gianna?
Yes.
Brilliant. David, where are you? I'm trying to look for you. You're right in the middle of my screen. That's fabulous. How was your conversation? You were in
Oh, mine was community engagement.
Fantastic. Or civic engagement.
Civic engagement. Sorry.
Yeah. Tell us about it, David. Any sort of aha searing moments for you?
Was a very robust conversation. I don't know, maybe David Tamori, who had such a key role to play in it, would want to add something to this. But all the arts, I think, by definition, are civic engagement. And there was a muralist who I think has just created a series of portraits of people, not just people, but even dogs and ducks in the neighborhood. And there was some enthusiasm for replicating, or at least being inspired by that in some of the other participants' localities. It's the kind of cross-pollination I think that you were probably hoping for when you conceived this happy conversation.
Thank you, David. Did anyone from that group have a question for David that they didn't quite get around to asking around civic engagement. Lauren, you gave a fabulous example of a project where you created a community mural and worked you brought learning into the community, and it was fantastic. And California Arts Council will be greatly appreciative of projects that include what we call intergenerational learning. That's where learning takes place in the community. It's not hierarchical, it's not didactic, it's not in the classroom, but it's taught across the different generations. So that was a fabulous project. What about someone from public health? Julie, I think you were in public health. Want to give a really distilled version of any aha moments you had?
Okay, well, I don't know if we had an aha or not, but we were mostly talking about ideas, not necessarily projects. David had a great one though. It's around most of our discussion centered around youth and children, it seems like. So one idea was in the Yuba Sutter area, there was a performing arts group that was in existence before called Healthy Kids. And it was a young people's performing arts group that would go out into the community. It was at the time sponsored by our hospital, which of course everything has changed there on the corporate structure of the health hospitals there. So just getting that going again, to be able to go out in the community and use performing arts as a way to get public health messages out to young people and kids. So that was one. Let me see what else. We had a couple different questions about using mental health, improving mental health outcomes, or providing mental health services as a way to hit on the health equity question. And that was one of those little things we keep getting asked about is, does it have to be about COVID? It does specifically mention COVID in the grant application guidelines, where we have to talk about COVID awareness, but we can also wrap that into greater health outcomes. So that was another thing. And then our one little aha, we got a lovely offer from Joanne from NorCal for Health. She's in the upper North State region, but offered to assist when it comes to being a bridge between the Creative Corps program and the counties in the very North State region, how to get that out to the public. If organizations, I believe it was Humboldt, forgive me, I don't remember all of the counties, but that can help with that and be a bridge to help you get there as far as the grant program.
Fantastic, Julie. Thank you so much. And again, everyone, don't forget to leap on that Conversation Cafe Facebook group and start sharing in and leaning in with your ideas and possible ideas for partnerships, etc. I noticed something from Andy in the chat. I'd love to continue to share art and science through collaborating with artists and scientists along similar lines to the recent forest fire project. I'm still working in this direction as an individual artist, and I invite others to contact me if you are interested in this direction and creating future projects and exhibitions. And Andy's given the email address as well. Just to say, your projects that you're dreaming up do not need to be limited to your county. They can be, and that's great. They can be really specific and just focus on a particular tract, a census tract within your county, and they can be county-wide. They can also be regional, as long as they remain within that 19-county upstate region. So you can work with artists across county lines, across regions, as long as it makes sense, as Katrina will have shared in her breakout room. River systems and forests, watersheds have no, they don't obey county lines. So let's do away with the politics of this and create some fabulous regional projects. I wanted to say something about the kinds of grant awards we're going to be looking at. We're starting as small as possibly $5,000 So if you're an artist that loves to work alone and you know what you want to do and you don't need a partner, you go for it. You write up an application for 5,000 and again, just align it to one of the 4 program goals. And then we'll be also awarding, monies up to, 25,000, from 25 to 50,000, 50 to 100, 100 to 200, and we'll reserve some discretionary funds for projects we feel could really, create systems changed and with some of our major issues across the upstate region. So think big, think small, it's all there for you. The larger your project, the larger your vision, think partnerships. Who's going to help you reach your goal? Think partnerships, align yourself to different agencies whose missions are aligned with those program goals. And get ahead of it, start working now. So again, make yourself known through that conversation cafe. Julie McNeil, interested to teach, facilitate art workshops, make comics, zines, posters, love intergenerational, jail, prison, science, mental health, mediation. Am a member of Humboldt Bay Mycology Society and Can Native Plant Society Justice Arts Coalition. Julie, you sound like the most amazing person to partner with. I almost feel like leaving my job and just coming to work with you. You seem seriously amazing.
Really is amazing. I can tell you that firsthand.
Hi, Stephanie. Stephanie's from Del Norte, right up on the Oregon border. And she hosted us in along with their local tribe at the Rancheria. It was amazing. Guys, be thinking about who your local tribes are. How are you involving them? This is keenly connected with all those program goals. What are the inequities there? What do your local tribes have access to? How can they help you share the stories that we so need to tell through the Creative Corps? I'd like to just turn for a moment to Katrina, if you're still with us in this beautiful sea of faces. Can you share any aha moments you had in terms of environment?
Well, it was a really great discussion. Did someone tell me how many were in that? It was 2 pages on my screen, but I thought someone said it was 30 something. I mean, there's a lot of people in there. So there was a
33.
What was it?
33.
Thank you for counting. Gosh, I should have, in hindsight, I wish I had just divided up. There were so many great ideas there. And I think most of all, and also thanks to Eric, he actually took the notes and wrote them up, and they're really easy here so I can peek. He's already sent them to me. It's amazing. These people are like just not only thinking big, but there was elements of art on water storage tanks in Trinity County, or recycling bins, bike share programs in Shasta, and having them be painted and having highlight local environmental issues. We had fuels reduction and cultural burning up by Happy Camp. And of course, we talked fire, and we talked about the larger regional, and we raised our hands. How many of us deal with not going outside because of air? Arts education. Sorry, as I'm reading this so quickly. We had Alex, who offered as a media person. So he was looking for ideas and put that out, shared some of his ideas, but he does radio programs and podcasts. And of course, Lauren was there from Dirt and Glitter that Stephanie had already told us about. So, and brought up, of course, Klamath Dams and the opportunities with there. And so that was great, since we've already been thinking about that and linking her up with people we know that are thinking about that project. Sally shared about working with native species and materials, as well as doing work with music and an exhibition with these wood materials, maybe involving instruments. Andy's was with, I'm sorry, Andy's, I'm trying to get up. It's still trees, forests, and climate change, and book artists. So, and there were so many hands still up. I think that's what was so hard when I got swooshed away. It was fun to swoosh away, but I mean, however that happened, but I really wanted to hear those ideas of those hands that were still raised. So again,
Katrina, why don't you put your email address, katrina@nevadacountyarts.org, in the chat, and then I encourage you all to reach out to Katrina with your ideas. We'd love, in a way, to create an informal repository of ideas, so that when others who perhaps weren't on this call ask, we can kind of share some of these, however crazy they seem. Like, let's start talking now, and let's get them into that conversation cafe that we've created, that Facebook group that's in the chat. Keep your eye on the chat. We're probably winding up now, but I'd love to hear from the social justice group. Let me know who was in the social justice group.
I mostly
That's
facilitated that group, Eliza.
wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Michaelin. Do you want to give a really quick snapshot of what you took from that?
Sure. Social justice feels a little bit more broad and potentially overwhelming than some of the other like clear-cut like climate, which is much more tangible. But we talked about sort of the confluence of all of these things with the prison system, education, and then kind of like there was a little talk around zoning. So like, how do we create the communities that are fully supportive so that the equity is there and the accessibility and the inclusion is there.
Thank you.
And now I'm thinking about like your journey to, and I can't remember where, but the town that was burned down and how they like recreated the town center based around art. And so something along
Yes.
those lines, perhaps.
Thanks so much. Thanks so much, Michaelin. Yes, Michaelin's referring to the town of Greenville that was entirely devastated. Within the last year, we drove through it last night in the dark in the winter under snow. Extraordinary experience, having only just visited it in October at the very beginning of our listening tour, only to find just by driving through artists who were beginning to mobilize in what they had begun to call their town center. It was like their village green, we might say in England, and already creating incredibly resilient, powerful ideas for the future of their city, determined to rebuild. Absolutely beautiful. We've been very much in touch with folks from Paradise who are rebuilding Paradise with culture, creativity, themes of social justice and equity at its core. So we really welcome these things. Anyone else from the social justice group? I saw some hands.
I think Marcelo has his hand up.
Marcelo, please. Hello, Marcelo.
Hi. Yeah, I mean, I just basically talked about allowing artists a space as David was opening up. That it was surprising of what artists were able to do if they just had time. I'm remembering this comment that Louise Glick made when she won the Nobel Prize. She said, "Maybe now people will finally just leave me alone now that I won the Nobel Prize." And allow her to, and that's at that stage, right? I'm thinking of the NEA artist grant, the Creative Writing Grant, in which you propose a project and here you are, here's your space, here's how you will be able to live, particularly to telling the stories of Northern California, of this state, of the, there's so many intersections. So being able to document what couldn't be documented before, I think is my running theme.
I love it, Marcelo. I'm so looking forward to your application. Thank you. Alyssa.
Yeah, while we're all still here, I wanted to quickly share out some of the ideas that popped up in the civic engagement group. One was the memorial aspects, memorials for the public health, for COVID, all the people that died, the wildfires, the floods. There was also encouragement to involve the literary arts around anthologies, commissioning essays and putting them together. That's one idea to involve literary arts. There was a person who talked about how hard it is to get people to serve on the grand jury. And so there could be a project around that. There's a great idea to do a citywide celebration that includes performances and then a reflection piece after that with parents involved. And I think this was coming from an arts commissioner in Oroville, who also suggested karaoke on school buses, flagging the fact that a bus driver in his childhood was sort of the person who introduced him to the arts. There are around voting, there could be partnerships with things like the League of Women the League of Women Voters, making their campaign pieces more artfully engaging. So call to artists for campaign posters. There was an idea to do, or there's like 60 mosaic panels on Access Road in communities where there's lots of trauma and mental health issues. Other sort of partners that got thrown out, high schools, the Garden Club, African American Center. In Ukiah, we have in Ukiah, Mendocino County, there's a block-long mural that has over 200 portraits of people in the community. So making sure that there are projects that reflect the community and create engagement around that. People see themselves represented. And then the idea to video the creation of some of the artworks and then have that component be a part of the project. So it's not just something existing in physical space, but there's like a digital piece. And I think that was already captured, but I just wanted to make sure those got shared out.
I love that. I wanted to add one more thing in the area of civic engagement. When we were in Sierra County, is BJ in the room at the moment? BJ is Executive Director at Sierra County Arts Council. We were there just last week and in the snow and rain.
I'm here.
Hi, BJ. Remember how Chuck Irvin, the presiding judge at Sierra County Supreme Court, joined us? Really
Yes.
extraordinary. He was passionate about youth involvement. How do we bring youth into the judiciary in terms of a sort of ambassadorial role, which of course, creates a kind of sense of lifelong engagement with our systems. I thought it was wonderful. So, and then how does one create that awareness through art? So I thought that was I was so impressed that he joined our call last week. Anyone I'm missing? Let's see. Gianna, can you see anyone that has their hand up that wanted to feedback? Still quite keen to hear more on social justice, bearing in mind the massive inequities that the Healthy Places Index are pointing out, the correlations between your ethnic and cultural demographics, community to community, and how artists might create awareness around those inequities and possible solutions. Anyone like to speak to that? Any ideas on projects for that?
I'm Davey Andrick. May I share?
Yes, Davey. Hi, good to hear you.
Hi, thank you. I'm David Andrick. I'm a multimedia artist here in Chico, California. I was thinking along the lines is that although Chico, California is very well-to-do in a lot of ways, what I see happening is that the economy is brought about differently within the zonings. As I said before, the zonings. What happens is that the workability, the gainful work, civil rights are being undermined here in Chico, California, and the economy of California is being undermined by the zonings here. This area has been entrapment for many years where it's said to be a lovely town. In a lot of ways it is. I want to say this, I very much applaud Chico. However, the zonings oftentimes mingle temptations and entrapment with homeless people and cycles of homelessness and rehabilitation that really undermines the data itself. So my point being is that the economy is being drained by this area in so many ways. And so I hope that that this area is really recognized with journalism, by journalists, and I hope to advocate for such. I do regard that that I don't have a lot of credentials and such. The thing is, though, is that even though this area may not be within the highlights of focus, I see that this is really the roots of how the economy and our goodness can come about if we address the root of it, of the challenges we see. And this is the Gold Rush area. This is really the roots of California's riches. Yet we can see that over the years, it hasn't gone well because this area has had a lot of alcohol flux and people undermining the too many systematic problems.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much, Davey. I'm so grateful to you for mentioning. I think I heard you mention goodness. I think at the root of the California Creative Corps is goodness. If we can just hold that close as we develop ideas for projects that are attached to those 4 program goals, I think we'll do well. I did want to call out the systemic or endemic, if you like, issue of housing insecurity and homelessness within the upstate region. This isn't isolated to upstate California. It's across the whole state. So we welcome, and the Healthy Places Index calls it out as a marker for inequities in health and a marker for health. So anything connected with housing insecurity, the sense of safety and of, and belonging in place will be greatly appreciated. I think we've come to the end. It's 1.5 hours in, and we still have 60 of us on this. It's absolutely amazing. David, before we say farewell to everyone, are there any kind of parting words? Have you come out of this with any better understanding of possible projects and how they align, how they're different from the original vision for the WPA? What's your taking on all of this?
This is terrifically inspiring. I'm thrilled to think that the original ideals of the Writers Project and the arts projects in general could ride again. And I hope I've been able to give you at least a glimpse of that. I'm such a broken record on the subject. I probably went on too long. Do keep me posted on everything you're doing. I would love to hear about it, and with a little luck, maybe even see some of it firsthand. Thank you all.
May I throw one last question to David?
Yeah.
David, Don Harris here from Nevada City. Looking back in retrospect, when we look at the WPA, it really seems like there's a unified artistic and aesthetic theme. Oh, am I not coming through?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I got you.
It seemed like it was the aesthetics and the art, and the whole piece was really unified. Is that true? Was there a central theme that everybody grabbed onto, or did it just evolve?
Sorry, say again?
Yeah, my impression of the WPA is that
David,
it was a unified artistic.
Don, speak slowly.
Oh, and I really do have to ring off, but I'll put my name in put my email address in the chat.
I'll send you the email address. I'll send you an email.
Certainly can.
Thank you.
I just want to encourage anyone. That if you want to save the chat, it was advised to me to hit the 3 little dots on the bottom right below the chat or wherever you have that, and you'll save it and it'll show up in a folder. And so you can get this, what you weren't able to read, because if you're like me, I couldn't keep track of both. There was so much going on. So
it says save chat.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, David, thank you. Don, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off. It's just that your words of wisdom are so treasured. I didn't want to miss a single thing. If you definitely share that question to us all now, I'd be very grateful. What was your question for David?
Yes. So I wanted to know if there was a unifying theme that they began with, because in retrospect, the writing that came out of it seemed so of a piece. It had an aesthetic if it was visual, it had a theme if it was literary. I was wondering how that all evolved.
Let's make sure that we get that question to David. I'd love to hear back on it. It's a brilliant question. Do we feel it's time to say farewell? Does anyone have any other burning questions? Would you mind putting our email address, Gianna, info@Upstate Creative Corps, into the chat? Please, everyone grab it. Make sure that you write to us with any questions or ideas. You'll be expecting to hear from us in early February. We'll launch the Creative Corps Upstate guidelines along with the application. You'll have about 2 months of an application window to put together your project. And so now's your little head start to start talking to each other and start engaging with us. And your county arts agencies, your county arts councils in your communities will also be in touch. So stay in touch with them too. They are our partners, greatly valued. Thank you all so much. Have you seen the, is that email? Yes, brilliant. Gianna, thank you so much. Has everyone got that?
Can I ask one last question?
Sure, Anissa.
Do we need to have our artist decided by the time we submit the grant?
I'm kind of looking at Don here. Ideally, yes.
Okay.
But in upstate rural California, for example, we had this question in Sierra County when the total population is only 300. Sierra County is going to want to borrow artists from other communities, and that's going to be absolutely fine. But your question really relates to, do you need to name an artist that you intend to employ within your application? Ideally, yes. Don and Katrina and Gianna, let's work on this. Let's challenge ourselves with this question. How can we make it so that if an agency is applying for funding and intend to employ an artist, that we have perhaps a pool of artists who haven't yet identified their institutionalized partners, and we kind of do a matchmaking thing. How does that sound to everyone?
I like that. I also like the fact that the organization or the person who doesn't yet know their artist has a plan and a process to obtain the artist, to find them somehow.
Very good. Very good.
Right.
Very good. So we kind of meet halfway on it.
Right.
Cool.
Is Julie still on the call? Julie? I was going to.
I am still here.
Great, Julie. What do you think of that idea? Do you like the way this is going?
Well, you know, the primary thing about this grant is that the money must go directly to artists or to arts organizations, right? Who then funnel the money out to specific artists. My only concern with that idea is that, you know, when you're doing the grant application, there's a lot to it that has to be answered. Like, what is the project? Who's going to administer the project? You know, what is the scope, the way that the 4 pillar areas are going to be attacked, so to speak, or addressed. So there's a lot in the grant application itself that's going to require a little more identification of who is this going to, you know?
Yeah. Yep.
So far, I know with Nevada County, we don't have, the guidelines are not out yet for artists and arts organizations. But if you go to the state of California, the California Arts Council website, you would go under programs and look up the Creative Corps. There's a whole thing about the administering organizations and the grant guidelines. What you want to look for would be the sub-grantee guidelines, which are different than it was for the administering organizations. So if you're an artist and you're wondering like, well, what rules apply to me? You'll get some preliminary information there as far as a sub-grantee and what's going to be required of you before we get the guidelines out for Nevada County for this particular North State region.
That's great, Julie. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Well, I think it looks like we're going to round it up now and say farewell. We'll be in touch with you. You have all the information you need to be in touch with us. Don't forget to join that Facebook group so we can keep in touch that way as well. And you'll hear from us soon. Thank you all so much for joining us. You all lent something invaluable to the conversation. You're going to make this grant program better because of your presence today. So thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.